Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've had an opportunity to have a conversation with our distinguished citizens yesterday after school, and I was bragging about the management of our students, their actions, and I appreciate you getting quietly so quickly. I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. This is a very special week for the Massillon City Schools and specifically for Washington High School. This is our annual Distinguished Citizens Week that kicked off, it kicked off many, many months ago, and students, there's been a lot of work being done to select these 4 fantastic representatives as they are deemed quite distinguished in society from their days of being alumnus students of Washington High School and the endeavors that they've had in their life. So we are very excited to have them with us this morning. I'd like you to please welcome with a round of applause our 4 distinguished citizens. So as I say your name, if you could just stand up and raise your hand so everybody can kind of put a face with a name. We have Mr. Robert Catlin, class of 1982. We have Mr. Harold Weatherby, class of 1953. Mr. Michael Lauber, class of 1976. And then we have Mr. Blaze Sparma here to honor his father, who is our distinguished citizen, Mr. Joe Sparma, of class of 1960. I'm very pleased to introduce, you know these 4 names that I will give you, but we have had these 4 top-notch students that are seniors for us in charge of their own distinguished citizen with announcing them and kind of taking them by the arm throughout this process this week. So many thanks to, and stand up guys, Mr. Alex Fuzz Burberry, Miss Michaela Toomey, Mr. Neil Huth, and Miss Gia Hathaway. Students, this will be Assembly 1 of a 2-part series. Assembly 2 will be tomorrow during Assembly schedule. And tomorrow's assembly will also consist of a segment of question and answer, so you can hear some in-depth wisdom from our fantastic distinguished citizens. So I'd like to thank everybody for your attentiveness. I ask, as always, that you do things the Massillon way, the right way, during your time here during this assembly. So please allow me to bring up Mr. Burberry to introduce our first distinguished citizen.
Mr. Robert S. Catlin was a member of the Massillon Tiger football team and graduated from Washington High School in 1982. He then furthered his education at the University of Akron and graduated in 1987. He was a member of the Ohio Army National Guard and is a U.S. veteran. Mr. Catlin is the CEO, president, and founder of Signature Mortgage Corporation and co-owner of TitleWorks Limited. Signature Mortgage Corporation has closed over $3.75 billion in residential loans since its inception and has assisted over 20,000 families achieve home ownership throughout Ohio, Michigan, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Colorado. Mr. Catlin holds several awards and achievements to his name: the Inc. 500 fastest growing privately held company in America, was an IBM Lotosphere presenter at the International Annual Conference hosted by IBM, was a part of the first e-sign loan application document set in the mortgage industry, and Signature Mortgage was featured in a business book titled Small Giants: Companies That Choose to Be Great Instead of Big. Mr. Catlin has involved himself in several community activities, including Wishes Can Happen, Pathway Caring for Children, and several food banks. He's also a Massillon Tiger booster, sideliner, and supporter. It is my honor to introduce to you WHS Distinguished Citizen, Mr. Robert S. Catlin.
Thank you, Fuzz. It was an awesome introduction. and my company is hiring, so you have to give me a call. We'll make you an intern right out of the gate. But it's certainly an honor and blessing to be here today, and I'm very humbled by this experience. And honestly, I get butterflies when I walked into the school. Us that graduated years and years ago, we didn't have the privilege of having a school like this. This is unreal. Massillon has always been known for athletics, but after visiting in the classrooms with Chuck yesterday, I was very impressed with this school, and you should feel blessed that you have a school like this, and I hope you do. I graduated 36 years ago, and I was in the stands 36 years ago like this, kind of wondering, where my life was going to take me, and I didn't have a clear direction. And I want you to know that even though that some of you have a direction of what you're going to do in college or what you're going to do with your adult life, it's okay that you don't, as long as you believe that you're going to do something special. Behind every great success story, there's people behind me that I have to recognize today. I have a fantastic, supporting, and loving wife, Shelley, and I have 3 beautiful children, Mark, Matthew, and Nicole. Nicole just graduated from Florida Gulf Coast University in Florida, and my 2 boys are in college in Florida as well. My parents, John and Joanne Catlin, they'll be at the dinner tomorrow night. Just a wonderful family and background, which was very important to my success and all my close friends. In addition, I have a tremendously loyal and dedicated staff at Signature Mortgage Corporation. I'll tell you just a brief story about that later, but Dan Gilbert taught me the mortgage business. He coincidentally owns the Cleveland Cavaliers and Quicken Loans. He always told me that, Bob, it's okay if you're not the smartest guy in the room. Just hire the smartest guy and gal in the room, which I've tried to do that with my staff, and I appreciate them tremendously. I want to talk about growing up in Massillon. I have 3 kids that are in their 20s, and I just met them for Easter, and I said, I got to speak to these students, kids. What do you think they want to hear? And my kids always loved to hear stories about when I was growing up, when I was in grade school, when I was in junior high school, and tell me this story again, tell me this story again. So I kind of collected just a couple different snapshots of my life. I grew up in the west side of Massillon, Mayflower Village. Anybody here from Mayflower Village or grew up in the west side of Massillon? There you go. I lived on Priscilla Street, 2128 Priscilla Street. I still remember my phone number. Those were the good old days, going to Gorell Elementary. We were the Gorell Gorillas. Why were we the Gorillas? I don't think I've ever seen a mascot before. But I'll tell you, you remember the craziest things about elementary school and our legendary kickball and battle ball games. I could not wait for recess. Recess was awesome. And I thought the food at Gorell was incredible. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, my parents said, "Hey, we're going to go to dinner tonight. Where'd you like to go?" And I said, I want to go to Gorell. And I didn't know any better. I thought that could be a restaurant that the family could eat at, but I guess not. Oh my goodness. And I also remember the Massillon Tiger football players would come to our school at Gorell. I think I was like in 4th or 5th or 6th grade. And the football players back then, they would have these bright orange blazers. And they would take 3 or 4 or 5, star players. And they would come to the school and we'd have an assembly and the players would be up on the stands or up in the audience, and we worshiped them. We thought they were professionals. It was amazing. We'd get their autograph. And then at that moment, I knew that I wanted to be a Massillon Tiger. I wanted to play football. I wanted to wear one of those blazers. I thought that was so cool. And on to Lauren Andrews. We were the Green Dragons, right, Darlene? I loved Lauren Andrews. Lauren Andrews was awesome. Back then, junior high school was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And I remember in 7th grade, I was 12, I think. I probably looked like about 8 or 9. And the guys and the gals in ninth grade, they looked like young adults. It was very intimidating. And man, we had a collection of star athletes. I played baseball and basketball and football and every sport that you can imagine. And I can tell you, we had some amazing athletes. I wasn't necessarily one of them, but I tried to be. And we'll talk about that later. In eighth grade at Lauren Andrews, we were 8-0. We won 8 games, we lost 0 games, and no one scored on us either. Undefeated, unscored upon. We had these special Lauren Andrews t-shirts. I wish I would have kept my t-shirt. I'd probably have it underneath my shirt today if I had it, but I don't know what happened to it. But many lifetime friendships were established in high school, just like you're establishing lifetime friendships here in high school. And I can honestly say, in elementary school and in junior high school, I remember all the names and the faces of my teachers. So if we have any teachers in the room today, it's amazing what, as we grow older, how we remember so much about you. Some good, mostly good. So on to Washington High School. You know, the first thing I remember, because now I'm going to be a sophomore, but football started in, June or July. And I can remember as a sophomore, we started practice in the summer. And talk about being intimidated. My goodness, I mean, some of the players looked like they were 25 years old. They may have been. No, I'm just kidding. These were grown men. They were tall and muscular and athletic, and some had full facial hair. And, I always kind of matured late in life, and I was scared to death. Honestly, I was. I didn't think I could make it through that. The senior year, 1979, where's Chuck Richards? He can attest. My God, that was probably the best defensive team we've ever had, maybe in the history of Massillon football. It was unreal, the talent on that team. And unfortunately for me, I was a sophomore, so we had to run the opposing team's offense, and it was a learning experience. Let's just say I got faster real quick because I didn't want to get hit by like Kevin McClellan or some of the big guys. Fast forward to my senior year. I'm sorry to talk about football so much, but these are my memories. We played Cincinnati Moeller at the Akron Rubber Bowl. And at the time, I don't know if they still do it, but the USA Today ranks the top, 20 or 25 high school teams in the country. And I believe at the time, both Massillon and Cincinnati Moeller were in the top 10. So this is going to be big time game of the week. I don't know, maybe week 5 or week 6. And I can remember taking a police escort with our buses to the Akron Rubber Bowl, and there was like 24,000 fans in attendance. And it was just unbelievable pressure for a young kid, really, to try to play in a game like that. High school flew by, and, before I know it, I was in the latter part of my senior year. And again, I can remember all the faces and names of my teachers and most of my fellow classmates, as you will. After high school, I came from a family of 6, a very generous and loving family, but, we did not have the resources to send all the kids to school. I was second youngest, and I remember telling my parents, I said, well, I want to go to college, and they said, well, good luck, let us know how that works out, which is good. I'm good with that. So I found a way. My senior year, March and April, I started to do some research. Not Google, we didn't have that back then. So I ended up finding the Ohio Army National Guard. Why in the world would I join the Ohio Army National Guard? Well, they were paying 4 years of college tuition, a 2-year enlistment bonus, and with a 6-year commitment. Okay, not a bad deal. So I said, I'm in. And my friends thought I was absolutely nuts and lost my mind. And you know what? I was starting to believe them, because when I arrived at Fort Knox, Kentucky, my best friend, yes, drill sergeant, entertained me for the next 15 weeks. So, it was kind of weird, because we graduated from high school in May or June, and all my buddies were going off to Bowling Green and Akron U and Miami of Ohio and Ohio State. But Bob was going off to Fort Knox, Kentucky. And when I got back in, towards the end of November. And when I returned home, all my buddies were gone. All my buddies were off to college. Some joined the service. And I'll tell you, it was lonely. It was a lonely time. I was, 18 still. All the buddies are gone. And, you realize that being an adult was not all that it was cracked up to be. If you are all like my children, they all wanted to be adults. When they were in junior high, they wanted to be in high school. When they were in high school, they wanted to be in college. And they were in college, they wanted to be an adult. Well, I can tell you, be prepared, be careful what you wish for, because you're all going to be an adult very, very quickly. And it will probably hit you, which is good in my mind. I went to college at Kent State at the Stark branch. I'm not supposed to call it Frank Road High, but I loved it. I loved it. I did not excel really in high school. I was an average student. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of get my what together and redo some college algebra and kind of get it back together, kind of refocus and say, I better get it together, because life moves on, and life will quickly move on without you. Okay? I graduated from the University of Akron. I tell my kids I graduated magna cum laude, which is not true. I was a good student. My first job was at United Parcel Service. I worked there part-time while in college. My first job at UPS, I would work 4 a.m. to 9 a.m., go to school full-time during the day, and 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer, I was in the National Guard. It's not exactly a fun college experience, but I got through it, and it taught me a lot. A headhunter called me when I was at UPS, and I think it's important when you go through your adult life, there's going to be certain moments that you hear the knocking on your door. I encourage you to at least go to the door, peek around it, because you're going to have a couple moments in your life that could change your life forever. And when you get that door, that knock on the door, and you'll know what I'm talking about later. And those of us that are older, that are 50s and 60s and 70s, you'll know we know what that means. There's certain intersections in your life you have to pay attention to, because if you don't, you will miss your opportunity. So I encourage you to answer the door. I'm not saying go through the door. Find out what that opportunity might look like. I'm 28 years old at the time. I was a district sales manager at UPS. I had stock options. I had a good job. I had a blue chip job. My parents were very proud of that job, and I was too. Headhunter calls and says, hey, I got a guy named Dan Gilbert that wants to come talk to you. Who's Dan Gilbert? This is back in, 1994, late 93. Okay, curiosity killed the cat, Len. I got to play on words here. So I met with Dan Gilbert and his brother Gary Gilbert they were called Rock Financial at the time, which they are now Quicken Loans. And if you pay attention to radio and TV, you see Quicken Loans everywhere. So I knew nothing about the mortgage business, and they said, that's perfectly fine. We're going to teach you everything you need to know. You're our guy, and we want you to come work for us. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to go back and tell my parents this. They thought I was crazy. Why would you possibly give up, your position at UPS to go to what's now Quicken Loans? I said, I don't know, it just feels right. I heard the knock, I opened the door, I investigated the company, and I'm just going to do it. So that was huge. 22 years later, here I am. I was with Rock Financial and Dan Gilbert for a year and a half. That was a $1 million education. To be next to that guy for a year and a half was unreal experience, and it changed my life. And I left to start my company, not necessarily to make more money, is that I wanted the independence and the freedom to start my own company from scratch. So I left Michigan, come back to Ohio, said, I'm going to start a mortgage company. My final thoughts, and I think this is important, and this could be applicable to some of you in this audience. Every person that I meet in my life, I try to pick up something, I call it a nugget, just a little gold nugget. And you're going to meet a lot of people in your life. You're going to meet coaches, teachers, students, friends in college, professors, your bosses at school, or your bosses at your new employment. I think it's important for you to pick up something from everyone you meet. It might not be something good. You might say, you know, I'm not going to be like that. It might be something great. But try to pick up something from every person that crosses your life. I believe people enter your life for a reason, possibly for a lesson. So take that. My final thoughts is, in school, in high school, I was not the fastest. I was not the strongest or the tallest in high school. Not even close, as all my friends will attest. Darlene, you know firsthand, I was not the homecoming king. And I scrambled to find a date for the prom. I was an average student. I was an average athlete with my share of friends. But I was a good kid from the west side of Massillon. I had a good family, a very good supporting family, loving family. And I certainly wasn't voted most likely to succeed. But I will always be a Tiger, and that is something you can never, ever underestimate. Does this sound familiar to anyone in the audience today? You know, the prom king, the star athlete, the A+++ student. It's okay that you're not that. I never was that. I was a good kid. I kind of screwed around a little bit in high school. I gathered myself in college. Never underestimate your future and dream the biggest possible dream that you can think of. Because if I can stand here today, you certainly can be standing here 36 years from now. There is magic in thinking big. Check that book out, by the way. Thank you for having me today, and go Tigers.
Michaela Toomey will now introduce the next WHS Distinguished Citizen.
Okay. Harold G. Weatherby graduated from Massillon Washington High School in 1953. He furthered his education at B.A. Kent State University until 1964. He started his professional career path at Timken Roller Bearing Company as a draftsman, then worked for Ohio Inspection Bureau and served in the Army and Reserves. Soon, Mr. Weatherby started as an insurance agent at A.A. Hammersmith in 1966. 5 years later, he became president and CEO of the agency. Over the next 42 years, Mr. Weatherby grew A.A. Hammersmith by acquiring more than 26 agencies in Stark and Tuscarawas counties. Mr. Weatherby has been awarded the J.S. Sandy Sanders Award presented by the Massillon West Stark Chamber of Commerce, Mary Blanche Award given by the Massillon Heritage Foundation, and multiple awards and recognitions from the Massillon Boys and Girls Club. Mr. Weatherby is involved in the community in many ways. He is currently serving as president of Rodney G. Klein Stock Market Library Museum in Massillon, Massillon Boys and Girls Club past president and board member, Massillon West Stark Chamber of Commerce past board member, Massillon Heritage Foundation Board past president and board member, chairman of United Way Campaign, and Central Presbyterian Church past trustee and treasurer for over 40 years. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the Stark County and Ohio handball champion, distinguished citizen, Harold G. Weatherby.
Oh, good morning. I'm glad to be here. Being 82 years old, you're lucky to still be around. But I graduated from Washington High School, and I still remember a lot of my teachers. Anywhere I go in the country, if you say you're from Massillon, they know all about it. So just remember, the students you graduate with, you remember most of them too, because every 5 years my class has a reunion here in Massillon, and I'm the treasurer, so I help with the committee, but we've met every year, and this is our 65th year that we're going to be meeting here this year, and we're all getting old, but we still like each other, and we love to see each other. I had a call from one of my classmates that was a professor at Cornell, and he says, "I'm coming back for the reunion." I said, "I didn't know you were still alive." But it's been fun. I played baseball in Massillon for the high school team, and our field was right out here in the back where your parking lot is. So things do change, but it's been fun. My son Doug is here. He graduated from Washington High School. My daughter and my other son also did. We all talk about our days at Washington High School. My English teacher, Mary Blanche Oberlin, she got me involved at the Boys and Girls Club and the Massillon Heritage Foundation, and I wasn't her best student, of course, but she helped me along the way, and I've been in Massillon so long that I know thousands of people, and I probably know most of your grandparents, or did know them, so it's been fun. I went to Kent State. I graduated from Kent State, but I started out at Ohio University, and I was talking to a couple of the students about Athens, Ohio. It's a great place. It's a good place to start. But I was about to be drafted, so I decided to enter the service and go on a 6-month program where I didn't have to go in for 2 or 3 years. And that kind of paid off, because you had to go 6 years in the reserves, but when I came out, I was a sergeant, so I didn't have to do all the dirty work, we say. I agree with what Bob said. You just don't have to be the very best student. You just got to keep going and doing things as they come along. Life changes very quickly. I started out in Sydney, Nova Scotia. I was born there. My dad came to Massillon when I was pretty young to work for Republic Steel. He was a roll designer, and they needed a roll designer, and he ended up here in Massillon, and I'm sure glad he did. It's just a great place to be from. And in college, there were a lot of Massillon people at Kent State. There were a lot of Massillon people at Ohio University. I had 2 roommates that I graduated from high school with that I roomed with the first 2 years probably at Ohio U. And we had a good time. I love sports. I love baseball, and my best baseball coach taught me how to play handball, and I've played handball all over the state of Ohio. Just a great game to stay in shape, and maybe that's why I'm still around. But you just gotta remember that Massillon is a great town to be from, and no matter where you go, they know that Massillon's a football town. But it's also, when you see this high school, and we walked through there yesterday, it's amazing. So I just hope you all appreciate it. I'm not going to talk too much longer because my memory isn't as good as it used to be, and but I did enjoy that trip through the high school yesterday, and you guys really have a great place. The old high school was good, but old, and it's amazing how much different this is when we walk through this high school, and some of the I guess you'd say football players that are on that board I knew very well, and some of the teachers I had, Elwood Kammer, and he was a coach and a teacher, and he was my I guess you'd say driving teacher. He didn't he'd take us out to drive, I'd say, and he'd say, whatever you do, don't get out on a busy street and open the door. And we all asked, well, why not? He says, well, I did it, and I got my car wrecked. So we just remember things from high school and what we did and what those teachers and professors have taught us. And just know that when you graduate from Massillon, Washington High School, you'll be proud. Thank you.
Good morning, students of Washington High School. And happy Friday to you all. And good morning to our distinguished citizens. As you know, students, today is day 2 of our assembly program. Yesterday, you had an opportunity to hear words of wisdom from 2 of our distinguished honorees, class of 1982, Mr. Robert Catlin, and class of 1953, Mr. Harold Weatherby. And I thank you both for that powerful message for our kids. As I stated yesterday, students, I attended our Rotary meeting downtown Massillon yesterday for a luncheon, and shared a couple of the takeaways that some students had shared with me after yesterday morning's program. And it was a pretty powerful message, and I appreciate those students for having that dialogue with me yesterday. But without further ado, we will begin today's ceremony. And as I stated yesterday, upon the completion of the speeches from our 2 distinguished citizen representatives today, we will hold a small question and answer session. So you'll kind of hear some real life wisdom. Questions have been created to hopefully spark your interest and continue on your educational journey. So please allow me to once again say thank you to our student ambassadors. I know yesterday Mr. Alex Berberi and Miss Michaela Toomey did a very fine job of being ambassadors for our distinguished citizens. Today, being honored, we will have with us Mr. Michael Lauber, class of 1976, and Mr. Blaze Sparma, son of Mr. Joe Sparma, class of 1960. So I will not do any more introductions because that's why we have these fantastic ambassadors with us. So I will first bring up to the podium Mr. Neil Huth to begin the ceremonies.
Michael R. Lauber was a 1976 graduate of Massillon, Washington High School. He was a member of the football and wrestling teams and was also involved in theater and student council. Upon graduating, he attended the College of Worcester, in which he obtained his bachelor's degree in 1980 in economics. He then furthered his education at Dartmouth, where he attended the Amos Tuck School of Business, in which he got his master's degree in 1983. He began his professional career as a marketing intern while still in school at the J.M. Smucker Company and Mellon Bank, before beginning his job at Tusco Display as the purchasing manager. He then became the marketing manager, president and CEO, and is currently chairman and CEO at Tusco Display. Mr. Lauber has obtained many awards and honors, including the Stark County Teen of the Month, the Massillon Tiger football captain, Outstanding Senior Man finalist at the College of Worcester, U.S. Assistant Secretary for Health Award, Tuscarawas County Chamber of Commerce Citizen of the Year, President's Award for the Point of Purchase Industry, and also inducted into the Point of Purchase Industry Hall of Fame. Mr. Lauber has been very active in his community. He is a College of Worcester trustee, a large group host at the New Point Community Church, a co-founder of the Tuscarawas Oil and Gas Alliance, former College of Worcester Alumni Board President, and a trustee and campaign chair of the United Way of Tuscarawas County. It is my honor to introduce to you WHS Distinguished Citizen, Mr. Michael R. Lauber.
You know, what a guy I am, huh? Isn't that something? I want to start by saying to those of you in your homerooms, I can't talk about this, but this is a far better looking group than we had yesterday. Okay, you're the same group, I understand. I'm frankly not going to talk about me. I'd rather talk about you. And I want to talk about exercise. And it strikes me that the three gentlemen that I've been honored to be a part of this class are all in fantastic shape, even in their 40-ish, let's say, and 50-ish and ish range. They've taken great care of themselves, and it's something that we ought to think about too, and I wish I had thought about more. Now, if I was Oprah and I told you to reach under your seat, don't do it, and pull out that envelope, don't do it, and said, I'm giving each one of you a brand new automobile of your choice, any make, any model, any cost, in the entire world, that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? You'd say, what a great gift. Now, some of you would say, oh man, I'm going for the Ferrari. And some of you might say, I'm going for the Rolls or the Benz or whatever the case may be. Right? Well, I got news for you. If I did that, I'd also say it's the only automobile you're ever going to have for the rest of your life. How would you take care of it? How would you treat it? What would you put in it? How hard would you drive it? What would you let other people do in it? We need to think of our bodies in the same way, because it's the only vehicle any of us is ever going to have, right? And I want you to think about exercising your body as a very important thing to take with you as you go out into adulthood. Whether you've been an athlete or not, it doesn't matter. Regardless of what model or make you have, it doesn't matter. It's the only vehicle you're ever going to have. Take great care of it. So exercise your body. The second form of exercise I want to talk about is exercising your mind. Now, how many of you plan to continue your education when you're done here at Washington High? If anybody hasn't put their hand up, you're full of baloney. Because you've got to continue your education, maybe not in a school, but you're going to get educated. Why not take control of that education and decide how and what you want to learn about? Don't feel like Hey, I'm not doing that education thing. I'm done writing papers. I'm done doing math problems. Baloney! You've got to exercise your mind too, because the world is changing awful fast, isn't it? I guarantee you, all of us look at the world in which you're entering today and think it's a whole different world than what we knew, dramatically. And each one of you likely has the control panel for the world at your fingertips all the time. You have access to more information than used to exist when I was in school. You have power to exercise your mind if you choose. That doesn't mean necessarily taking classes. It means maybe going to work tomorrow and learning, how can I do a better job at my job? It means being curious about the world around you. What can I learn about? What do I find interesting? Not what somebody else tells me I ought to find interesting, but what do I find interesting? What can I dive into? What can I become an expert in? Now, it might be becoming an expert at bussing tables at the Cameo Grill. You know what? The Cameo Grill needs experts at that too. Or being the greatest person at the Wendy's window saying, here's your hamburger. That's a start. But do the very best and learn on the job, because as you learn, you'll learn you have greater opportunities going forward by exercising your mind. The third and final exercise that I want to touch on is exercising your spirit. Now, not everybody has been as fortunate as me. I was unbelievably blessed in a million ways, with a loving family, with supportive friends, with a great school with wonderful teachers. I had so much going for me and an awful lot of luck along the way. And not all of you are going to be in that same case. But that doesn't mean that you can be not thankful and not grateful. Because travel the world, as I have, and see places where you think, how do these people survive? These people don't have a chance to live. That they may not make it to age 5, let alone 15 or 25 or 50. We don't worry about that so much, do we? We don't have to. We can have grateful spirits if we choose. I encourage you to choose to be grateful in your spirit. I've had some success in my business world. I've had some success in education and other things. But I guarantee you, for every success I've had 10 failures. You know, Muhammad Ali said the difference between a champ and a chump is the champ gets back up off the mat one more time. Have a spirit of resilience. You know, the city of Massillon is known as the city of, the city of champions. Is it because we never lose? Is it because we always win? Almost. No, we've won along the way in a variety of ways, not just in football, but in a variety of ways. We're the city of champions, and you are representatives of that city of champions, every one of you. And you can live that out by really doing 3 things. Champions prepare. I can get any coach, I can get any teacher to come up here and say, prepare, do your homework, get ready, be ready to go. Prepare. And then perform. Go out and do it. Go out and make it happen. You know what? I prepared before I came up here, and now I'm performing. And afterwards, I'll think, I could have done this better and that better. It's also to assess at the end and say, how could I do it better next time? That's what I learned as being a Massillon Tiger. I learned about being a champion. And I applaud every one of you as you go out into the world, as I have, and be champions too. You know, I have traveled the world, and I've met people in weird places, and they've said, "What's your hometown?" And I've said, Massillon, Ohio, in the United States. Football, Paul Brown, champions. All true. But we're a lot more than that, aren't we? Absolutely are. You are the champions of today and the champions tomorrow because you come from the city of champions. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you this morning and be one of you. Thank you very much.
Gia Hathaway will now introduce our next WHS Distinguished Citizen.
Mr. Joe Sparma graduated Massillon Washington High School in 1960. He then attended The Ohio State University until 1963. He played football and baseball at The Ohio State University, and then he was drafted to be in the MLB for a major league picture for the Detroit Tigers and then the Montreal Expos. Later, he became vice president of sales marketing at Worthington Steel. He was a 3-year varsity letterman for football and baseball for the Massillon Tigers. As a sophomore, in the final minute against #1 ranked Warren Harding, he threw a 46-yard touchdown pass for a thrilling Tiger win. He then helped lead the Massillon Tiger football team to become state champions in 1959. Mr. Sparma was named first team All-Ohio and led the North to a win in the 1960 North-South All-Star Classic. Mr. Sparma played 3 years of football and baseball at The Ohio State University from 1960 until 1963. He was a starting quarterback in 1961 to 1962. He threw for 1,300 yards and 26 touchdowns in his career at Ohio State. In 1961, he had 474 total yards and threw an 80-yard touchdown pass in the Michigan game, leading OSU to a Big Ten championship and a national championship, as well as an 8-0 season. Mr. Sparma also played baseball and pitched for the Buckeyes, throwing a no-hitter against Michigan in 1963 and holding the strikeout record for OSU at that time. In 1963, he was then drafted by the Detroit Tigers. He had a 52-52 record and 183 major league appearances, and he posted a 16-9 record with 11 complete games, 5 shutouts, and a 3.76 ERA in 1967. He pitched a complete game to clinch the pennant against the New York Yankees and helped the Detroit Tigers win the World Series in 1968. He then took a no-hitter into the 9th inning with 1 out on a nationally televised game in 1969. It gives me great honor to introduce Blaze Sparma, who will be representing his father, Joe Sparma, as a WHS Distinguished Citizen.
Thank you, Gia. The one omission there in the resume is that while at Massillon, the football team and my dad's teams were 3-0 against Camp McKinley. So he was just as proud as that as being 3-0 against Michigan. And I have seen that the last 6 out of 7 years, I think Massillon's taken McKinley down. So congratulations and keep that up, please. I was invited here this week to honor my father as a Massillon Distinguished Citizen. And when Chuck Richards called me back in the fall and told me I'd be speaking to the students, I was very excited and very nervous. I wish my father was here speaking today and I was out with all you sitting and listening, but unfortunately he passed away many years ago. Because I am here to accept the award on my father's behalf, I thought deeply on what my message would be today. And as I sat down to write down my thoughts, I decided my message should be what I believe my father would be here speaking about if he was talking to you, and how I saw Massillon through his eyes. Winning is a Massillon tradition. Joe Sparma won a high school football state championship while at Massillon, a college football national championship while at Ohio State, and a World Series title for the Detroit Tigers. Growing up, I wanted to do the same, but the odds of accomplishing this trifecta are very low. My father, knowing his son wanted to follow in his footsteps, always encouraged me. He told me I was better than he was, even though I knew that wasn't true. To all of you, I want you to know that my dad's achievements didn't end on the sports field. I think he would have told you that being a role model, a good father, a good husband, a respectful person were just as important. Those are the attributes that make up a distinguished citizen. He would have told you how lucky you are to be sitting in this gym, attending a school with such a tremendous tradition. Be proud of where it is you come from, and do your best to make it a better place when you leave here. I have no doubt my father was proud of where he came from and always very proud of being a Massillon alum. In 1982, when I was in 6th grade living in Columbus, Ohio, our family attended the state championship football game. It was Massillon versus Cincinnati Moeller. Moeller at the time was the overwhelming power in Ohio high school football. They had won the state championship in 5 of the previous 6 seasons. Moeller was so highly thought of as a program at that time that just the previous year, their head coach, Jerry Faust, left the high school and became the head coach at Notre Dame. While the prevailing thought at the time was that Moeller was a heavy favorite, I, as a young 6th grader, knew Massillon would win that game. I knew because growing up and listening to my father talk about Massillon football, that winning was a Massillon tradition. The 42,000 fans in attendance that game were mostly in orange and black, and Massillon was led by the great Chris Spielman. Massillon fought hard, but as the game wore on, it was evident Moeller was a better team that day. And as the game ended, it was Moeller who came out victorious. But even in loss, I could see the pride in my dad's eyes, knowing that he was part of this Massillon tradition. It was shortly after that state championship game when my dad asked if I would consider moving to Massillon to play high school football. In my mind, that was an intimidating thought. You see, to me, Massillon was a place where only the best of the best played. It was bigger than life. And I was just a young kid, scared to death about the thought of moving from Columbus to Massillon to play high school football. The tradition you have here is something special, and I hope you all understand and embrace that. I was here in 1992 when my father was added to the Massillon Wall of Fame. I was here in 2012 when he was inducted into the Stark County Hall of Fame. And I'm here now 57 years after he graduated, accepting another honor. All because people here remember. On the athletic field, my dad learned a lot about life. I believe sports teach life lessons, but it's what you do with those lessons that count. As a youngster, my dad preached to me about hard work, dedication, sportsmanship, and respect. I believe if he were here speaking to you today, he'd be telling you these same things. He'd say whether you're a senior and you have your future all figured out, or you're an underclassman and still trying to figure it out, the formula for success is simple, and one he learned while here at Massillon. With hard work, determination, and respect, you will not fail. And so on behalf of my dad and our family, thank you all for honoring my father this week and allowing me to come here and speak to you. And please always, always continue to remember, be proud of where you come from, and do not forget, it's your turn to ensure that the great traditions of Massillon continue on. Thank you very much.
All right, at this time, can we have all of our distinguished citizens please come on up for the question and answer. We're going to go up on the stage. Oh, we'll bring it down low.
Against the wall?
Yep.
All right. So we'll take turns here as we get queried.
So at this time, questions for our distinguished citizens. Raise your hand, I'll point to you, and you come on up to the microphone.
Okay, thank
Now,
you.
I know for a fact teachers talk to specific students about questions. So don't be shy.
No one wants to go first.
There we go. There we go.
All right.
All right.
So I have a question for Mr. Catlin. Yesterday you said that you heard the knock. What do you think the knock will be in today's society?
Well, the knock is going to be based on your life and where you're at with your life at the time. I think the thing that's most important is you have to pay attention to the natural flow of your life, not to get, down that road, but seriously, your life has a certain path. And I've always felt that if you felt that your life is not going in the right direction, like you were struggling, like you were swimming upstream, you need to pay attention to that, and you need to find your way and find your path. And life should feel like when you're in a good spot in your life, you feel like you're swimming downstream. So when you look for that knock, you'll know, because you'll hear it and you'll say, I wonder if that's my knock. And if you feel that in your heart and in your belly, it probably is. And you need to pay attention to that possible opportunity. Now, don't think that that's going to happen every day. Like, is that a knock today? You'll know. Just be ready for it. And it's going to be, depending on where you're at in your life, each person is going to have that intersection that they have to recognize that, is this one of those intersections in my life that could change my life forever? And pay attention to the signs in your life. Pay attention to the people that enter your life. People enter your life for a reason. And pay attention to that and be aware of that and answer that door. And then you decide, your heart will tell you where to go. Thank you.
My question is also for Mr. Catlin. Choose to be great instead of big is a rather unique approach to business. Can you speak to this idea as it applies to today's environment?
Yeah, in my business, in the mortgage industry, my company is relatively small in the scheme of things. And there were many opportunities that I had to grow my company, nearly tenfold. And, speaking with my wife and my children, and, we wanted to figure out what's most important, to be the biggest or the best. And I value my time with my kids. I value my time with my family. And we chose to try to be great instead of big. And that's a decision that we've made. And I've stuck with it, and I feel good about it. And I think one of the reasons why I left corporate America is to control my destiny, so I can have the freedom and the independence to make decisions on how much time I want to commit to the business world versus my family world. So to each his own. There's times where I think, well, maybe I should have grew this company a lot bigger, but I feel good where we're at, and I feel that at this point in my life I've made a good decision on staying relatively small, more of a boutique type of financing company, and I'm sticking with that. So thank you.
Yeah, okay, my question's for Mr. Sparma. So obviously your father was a great athlete, Massillon, everything that he did after high school. So could you tell us a little bit about your athletic career?
Sure.
Loser.
I thought I asked Chuck to make these true or false questions when you came up and asked something. So growing up and knowing what my father had achieved, I thought I was going to be an NFL quarterback. That was my ambition. I was 5'6", 112 pounds when I started for the freshman football team at my high school, getting the crap knocked out of me every day. Those ambitions changed a little bit. Baseball became my focus as I got older. We won a state championship at my high school down in Columbus, Ohio as a senior. I won a Big Ten championship at Ohio State as a junior. Ended up being a third-round draft pick in the Major League Baseball draft back in 1991. So, it's like everything. You look back and you hear these guys talk, these guys that went to your own school here. I didn't. I look back and there's things I could have done better, more dedication, better decision-making. Ultimately, had some arm injuries, though, that knocked me out of there with baseball. But, thank you for the question.
And also, what was your overall record in baseball? If you can remember.
Well, if I go all the way back and combine my Little League standings all the way up, it was a damn good record. I'm sorry, say that again?
Just high school?
Oh, in high school, oh gosh. I actually enjoyed hitting more than pitching, but I started on the varsity as a sophomore. I think I was undefeated as a sophomore and had one loss as a junior, one loss as a senior, which sounds good, except our senior team was 33-2, and I had one of those losses that year.
Wow, that's nice.
This is really for all of you, but what advice do you have for future college students that don't really know where to take their path, like what career to go into?
I think you go first.
That's a great question. I have 4 daughters. My youngest daughter is a junior in high school. And so we're kind of in the midst of that as well. If you were to poll 100 adults who went to college and say, what did you go to college for, and what do you do today, 10 years later, you would find a big disconnect between the two things. So I would encourage you to learn broadly first and not go necessarily with a focus unless you really already own it. You know what, I want to be a nurse. I've always wanted to be a nurse. I'm going to nursing school. Go own that. But if you're in a case of, I think, a majority of potential college students, you need to say, I'm going to go learn about the opportunities out there. There's so much changing in the world. The statistics are something on the order of, how many jobs that you'll be doing 20 years from now don't exist today. It's a big number. So how do you prepare yourself for that? And I would say be somebody who's continually learning. Even if you're a history major, you could end up being a medical doctor. Go and find your sweet spot and not over-stress about making the right decision as a 17 or 18-year-old that I've got to know what my career is right out of the box. And sometimes you feel that pressure, I know. I don't know if that's helpful or not. Anybody else want to take a shot?
I agree. You don't necessarily will have all the answers of where your life is going to take you, but I think it's important to get started. And it's okay that you don't know exactly where you're going, but get started. And if it's college, then keep it broad. I mean, my goodness, I probably had 7 majors, drove my parents crazy. you know? So, and that's okay that you don't know yet. I think focus on communication skills. Oral and written communication skills are huge in this world. He's a tremendous speaker. It's taken him a very far career. Computer skills, you know, focus on that and see where your life takes you, but get started. You have to go grab your life. Life is not going to take you. You have to grab it and go. I wish it were easy. I mean, I have 3 children too, and we struggle with, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to major in. You have to go get your life, and whatever that is, attack it, and just start. Just get started with something. That's all I have.
I started at Ohio U as soon as I graduated with 2 of my buddies from high school. We roomed together the first year, and we all went different directions. One became a professor at Cornell, the other one became a pharmacist, and I came back to Massillon and became an insurance agent. So. You never know where you're going, and I enjoyed my life just as much as they did. So you could be anything you want. You just got to figure out what it is you like to do. I like people. I've talked to thousands of people, and I've been all over the world, and I'm happy with that. So I hope you can do the same.
If you could have done things differently in life, what would you have done differently? Yeah, you.
Well, okay. It's on. Okay, so I don't, I know this sounds crazy, but I don't think I would do anything differently. I know that sounds like, wow. You know, I spent about 2 years at Rock Financial, which is now Quicken Loans. And at the time, I was vice president of that company. And that was a very difficult decision to break away from there. So, you know, when I look at my life, you know, I'm 50, soon to be 54, and I look, oh, geez, I wonder how things would have went if I would have stayed with, you know, Quicken Loans, and could I have been the CEO or the president, or, yeah, you know, you think those thoughts. But I like my decision that I've made, and I think it's important when you make decisions in your life, and those just, it's important not to look back and question. You've made that decision, you own it, and make the best of your today and your future. So you're always going to think back, but I don't want you to. It happened. There's a past to all of us, but take your life forward. Go forward. Don't look in the rearview mirror. That's why it's real small. The windshield's real big. Just go forward with your life and your decisions. So thank you.
My question is for Mr. Weatherby, and I was wondering, for a young person looking for a career, would you suggest the insurance field?
Could you, I don't hear real well, so could you, what was the last part of that?
Would you recommend insurance as a career for young people today?
I think it's a great career, personally. It's not easy to get into the insurance business. They hire a lot of life insurance people, and that's the worst part because it's the hardest to do. But fire and casualty, you know, automobile insurance, home insurance, that's a lot easier to get into, and you'll never be sorry if you do. Thank you.
For anyone that wants to answer, what was your favorite thing to do in high school, and where was your favorite place to hang out?
I'm guessing Blaze isn't taking that one. Yeah. All right, here's part of the problem here. Some of the places that we hung out don't exist anymore. You know, because I would say the Red Barn. Yeah, I see some of the teachers going, oh, yeah, man, I love their sandwiches. They don't exist anymore. For me, my favorite class, probably, I had a whole bunch of really great classes, but my senior English class, I was the bicentennial class of 76. So our teacher was very creative and said, let's create some skits from history. So Paul Revere and Washington crossing the Potomac, you know, whatever, you know, throwing a coin across the Potomac. We came up with all these skits, and it was just fun. It was a fun way of sharing history. And he let us create those scripts, let us do it, and then we took our show on the road. We went to all the elementary schools. We went to the middle school, or the junior highs at that time, and went to different civic groups. So it was having an opportunity to do, not just sit in your desk and write notes down. It was very interactive. So, you know, I would say an opportunity to do something a little out of the norm was great. Yeah, and what was your favorite hangout place?
My favorite class was history. I love history, and I still do. I've always, all my life, just kept up with that. My father was the same way. He had everywhere he went, he wanted to know more about it and what was the history. But that's about all I know about that. What was the other part of that question?
Where did you hang out when you weren't in school?
The Sugar Bowl.
All right. Yeah.
That was one of the places anyway. Can't tell the other ones.
This is a question for all of you. How did Massillon sports help you become the person you are today, both as a member of the community and business leaders or leaders in your different association?
Yeah.
Repeat that. Yes, repeat that.
How does sports help you become sports? How does sports help you become the man you are today?
Oh, there.
I think sports is huge in my career. I played pretty much every sport you can imagine growing up, from Bantam League baseball down there off of down in Lincoln Park, baseball, basketball, track, football, wrestling. I think it's huge. It builds camaraderie, commitment, practice. But I loved it, and it sports prepared me to compete in the business world, taught me how to win and how to lose. And I look for that, honestly, as a character trait when I interview. And they don't have to be star athletes. I just want to know, have they competed in their life? And have they won or have they lost? And how did they deal with that adversity? And that's actually one of my questions for interviews with new people, is what they're all about. And because you have to compete in this world. This is a competition. You don't get a participation trophy in the adult world at your job. You have to be a winner. So get prepared for that. And I think sports, and especially this high school in particular, prepares you tremendously for the future. Thank you.
I'm going to second his comments, but I'm going to add to it, and that is sports, but not just sports, teach teamwork, because you're not in this, you don't do anything by yourself. Even if you're a single proprietor insurance agent, you've got a lot of support. And how do you operate in a team environment? Are you a good teammate? That's one of the questions we look for in any hire we make in my business. We specifically say we look for great teammates. Anybody not know what that means? Whether you've ever been on a team or not, a sports team, it's kind of irrelevant. You know what a great teammate is. Somebody who's got your back, somebody who shows up, who pushes you, who encourages you. We're a team in anything that we do, so I'm looking for other people to understand that idea and buy into the teamwork as well. Please.
That's a great question. I love that question. I'll keep this pretty short and simple, but as you're playing sports, you're going to have a lot of coaches and mentors, right? Guys that are older that have been through the system, and they're all going to be giving you advice. And there's sometimes you're going to really going to remember some advice someone gave you that helps you in life later, that helped you in sports as well. And I remember my coach's father one time saw how I was too passionate out there. My highs were too high, my lows were too low, and he said, hey, you got to stay in here somewhere, right? You're having success, don't get way up here, and when you're not having success, don't get way down here. And I have really taken that, and that was at my junior year in high school, I believe, and taken that and tried to live my life that way, and I think it's been a big help. I think as far as sports go on the field, I think Michael might have talked about that earlier, but you got to get off the mat when you get beat. Don't quit. You're going to find out, right, who quits and who's going to constantly get back up. And sports teach that, and it's a big part of life as you get older. Winning is important. It's not everything. How you deal with losing is important, but you always got to get off that mat. Don't feel sorry for yourself. There's always an opportunity around the corner. So thank you.
This question is kind of for all of you, but what was one of your most defining moments in life? Like hardships you went through that made you who you are today, that you got over?
All right, I'm going to give you one. I was left offensive tackle and defensive end on my junior and senior teams. And my senior year, we were preseasonally ranked in the top 10 in the nation. Bunch of seniors. We had been all starters as juniors. We're gonna kill everybody, but we didn't. And in fact, in the third game of the season, I broke my leg. And long story short, I had surgery at the end of the season. I was in a cast for 5.5 months. So it didn't go, and I had planned to go on and play in college. Still could have, but I decided not to. And because I didn't do that, I went out for the spring play. And I had a bit part, but it was fun. And then when I went off to college, there was open casting call. I wasn't playing football. I'm going to go out for a play too. I got a part in a play, got a part in another play. The third play I was in, another guy was dating this really cute young woman. And long story short, she's been my wife for 35 years. Hey, and I'm just saying she's unbelievably hot. It's the truth. It's the truth. It doesn't make sense, I know. But my point about that is, my life didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. It ended up being a defining moment for me in a different way than I anticipated, but I went with it. So, thank you.
You guys figured this out, I see. They asked for questions earlier, nobody came up. And then a few of you figured I got a test at 10:30. If we keep asking these questions, they're going to postpone that test till tomorrow. So I don't know, I can't remember the exact question, but defining moment, it's kind of funny in my life. I came from a very, very loving and supportive family. My mom was probably over-loving, over-gloating. and helped build my confidence, but also made me a little weak. I was 6 years old pitching my first Little League game, and we actually pitched back then. I think we do T-ball now, but I got on that mound and my expectations were high. And I started walking everybody. And in this league, they allowed 4 pitches to be a walk, and next thing you know, the bases were loaded. And then the next kid walked, the bases were loaded. The next kid walked, the bases were loaded. And I started tearing up on that mound, and I figured, where is my mom? And I literally walked off the mound. She was standing behind the dugout. There was no dugout, behind the bench where we sat. And I came to my mom, and I'm walking off the mound like this. And I said, oh my gosh, I need that hug, and tears were coming down. And I looked at her, expecting this loving mom to come out and give me the hug. And I've never seen that face since she made it that time. She said, get back out there! And I tell that story again because it's those things in life you remember. So if you're talking about defining moments, I do remember that. And it goes back to just keep grinding it out, and good things will happen. So.
Okay, this is for all of you. Do you think that your failures and your setbacks is what pushed you to keep going and go harder?
I thought for sure his mom was coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah,
Didn't
I
you?
do too.
Yeah, I thought so too.
So repeat the question again. I'm sorry.
That your failures and setbacks is what pushed you to go harder and keep going.
Oh, no doubt. Failures and setbacks are, have been a key for me. Sometimes you have to fall completely down and nearly out, and to get up and brush yourself off and get going. I'll just tell you a brief story of a setback or a failure. I was working in Michigan with Rock Financial, and I was planning on starting my own company. Well, I got to be careful because this is being recorded. I didn't realize that my phones at the office were being recorded, and so to make a long story short, I'm at home at my house in Michigan, and the doorbell rings, and it's the sheriff. And I'm like, my goodness, what's the sheriff doing here? And he was delivering me a cease and desist from my company, that they found out that I had plans of starting my own company, and there is a non-competition involved with that. So talk about fainting literally down to the floor. So my life obviously changed dramatically after receiving that piece of literature. And so that's a perfect example of falling flat on your rear and trying to dust yourself off. And here I am today. So that seemed to work out okay, but that's a good example. Thank you.
Are you ready to quit? Well, I've had a few disappointments in my life, but at Ohio University, I wasn't doing too good, and it got kind of difficult, and I decided that I like sports better than I like studying. So I went in the service, and that changed my whole life. I taught fire direction out in Arkansas, and when I came back, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I met my wife at Ohio University on a blind date, and somehow we got married, and we've been married for 57 years.
Students, I would like to thank you. Great questions. And how about one more round of applause for these 4 fantastic, distinguished citizens.
I joined cosmetology because I've always loved coloring hair and different colors and makeup.
I joined media because I've always had a passion for all things related to media.
I've always had a passion for teaching other people, especially topics that I'm interested in.
I want to pursue a career as an orthopedic surgeon. And so when I saw that we had this class, I immediately circled it on my schedule and was excited to join.
This class has made me better because it made me very responsible.
I like the relationships that I've developed in this class. The girls that are in here with me, I've really grown close with all of them.
I joined this class because I enjoy helping others and I want to make a difference.
Even like just making something and having people go, wow, that's really interesting. It means the world.
It was just a really good environment to be in. It was real hands-on and it was just something I really wanted to do.
I joined the construction trades to gain experience in the job I want in the future.
Everything that this class has taught me will account for my career in the future.
Before I came to this class, I was unemployed and Ms. Markley helped me get a job.
I'm going to use what I learned in manufacturing in order to better decide my career.
It gave me more knowledge on cars and gave me plans to go in the auto industry.
Massillon CTE works for me.
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 Works for me.
For me.
For me.
For me.
Massillon CTE works for me.